Revenge films.
My name is Ashley Smith. I'm a normal 23-year-old and I work as a preschool teacher. About 2 years ago, my boyfriend Henry and I started living together in our own place. I met Henry because our childhood homes were in the same neighborhood. We were childhood friends that have known each other for as long as we could remember, and then, right around high school, was when we began dating. Because we had known each other for so long and have been through so many highs and lows together, I'm confident that we have a connection that nobody else could beat. I truly felt that he was my soulmate. After we both graduated from college and we were both able to get jobs, our income came steady. Recently, Henry officially proposed to me, and we were going to be getting married. In theory, we should have been at the peak of our happiness until now, but there was actually one thing that was making us both uneasy, and that was the presence of one more childhood friend that lived in the same neighborhood as us growing up. Her name was Karen, and recently, she had become the seed to our uneasiness. Ever since we were little kids, Karen had always had a spoiled and bratty personality. She would be overly self-conscious, but always compare herself to others. And most of the people around her didn't like her. However, because we had all grown up together and were childhood friends, neither Henry nor I were able to just leave her. We tried to keep some kind of distance from her, but we still continued to be her friend. We started to notice that Karen was acting weird, right around the time that Henry and I started dating. Back in high school, all three of us were attending different high schools, even though we lived in the same neighborhood. One day, Karen saw Henry and I meeting up at the train station and walking home together. And out of nowhere, Karen said a strange thing to the both of us. After we had walked home together and Henry and I were standing outside of his house talking, Karen ran over to us with extreme momentum, and then she grabbed Henry's arm and started yelling at him. "Hey, Henry, why did you walk home together with Ashley? Wait a minute. Don't tell me that you're cheating on me with Ashley!" And she was furious with him. Both Henry and I stood there, shocked by the sudden anger. Our jaws opened and we were at a loss for words, but Karen continued. "I'm going to become your wife, aren't I? We're going to get married, aren't we?" And she started crying, and then with tears streaming down her face, she ran home. I turned to Henry and asked him, "Do you have any idea what she's talking about?" And he replied,
"If I think back now, I'm pretty sure back in preschool she may have asked me to make her my wife at some point, but to be honest, I don't really remember. It was so long ago."
And he looks just as confused as I was. On that day, both of us were confused by the situation, and I left Henry there and headed back home. And ever since that day, Karen was waiting for Henry every day outside of his house after school. And if I was ever with him, she would yell at him, "You cheater!" and then cry and go running home again. This was happening every day, and we didn't know what to do about it anymore, so we decided to walk together close to our houses, but to part ways and go home at different times. But Karen was observing Henry every single day, and she would regularly send him really long text messages, and those messages would say things like, "You and I are tied together by fate. We're meant to be together, so I'm waiting for your wedding proposal." They were all one-sided, and honestly, they were creepy. Henry and I were both terrified of Karen as her stalker actions continued to escalate. But we continued our relationship. After we both turned 20 years old, we saved up enough money and decided that we would move out of that neighborhood together. After we had both moved out of our childhood homes in the neighborhood where Karen was, for a while her stalker actions calmed down. But even though she wasn't physically there, she was constantly messaging us and calling us, asking where we moved to. In order to make sure that Karen wouldn't find out where he got a job or where he was living, Henry had asked our parents and our friends not to say anything to Karen. Since she didn't know any of this, he said that he could tolerate her messages. However, things took a turn not long after Henry had officially proposed to me, and that incident came out of nowhere. On that day, Henry and I just so happened to finish work at the same time and were able to head home together. We went out for dinner outside and we were holding hands together as we walked home. However, as soon as we arrived in front of our apartment building, suddenly from behind me, I felt somebody grabbed my hand with great force. I was shocked, and when I turned around, I was even more terrified to find Karen standing there. Karen was fuming with anger, and the tears were streaming down her face, and she turned to us and said, "I saw you guys at the train station, so I followed you here. Now explain this to me. What's going on?" She was throwing a tantrum. Because it was already at night and we didn't want to trouble the neighbors, I desperately tried to calm Karen down, even though she was crying and screaming. But even still, Karen said, "Why are you two holding hands? Is this where you live, Henry? Tell me." And she kept pressing us with these questions. But one of the neighbors overheard the commotion and they opened the window and yelled out, "Shut up!" Under her breath, Karen muttered, "Damn it, I'm going to be back." And she turned around and left for the day. When Henry and I got back upstairs, he seemed exhausted, and he said,
"The next time I see her, I'm gonna tell her everything, the whole truth."
I was uneasy about this, but I thought we couldn't take this anymore, so I replied, "I'll go with you. We can do it together." 3 days later, when Henry got home, he seemed relieved, and with a smile on his face, he said to me,
"Just now, Karen was waiting for me outside of the apartment, so I told her that I'm getting married to you."
When I asked him, what did Karen say in response to that, Henry replied,
"About that? When I told her that I'm getting married to you, Ashley, she seemed kinda happy about it."
When I heard this response, I couldn't help but miss a beat. I didn't understand why on earth she would seem happy about it after everything that she had said and done up until now. But for now, since he had told her the truth, and that should be settled, we decided to wait and see what Karen's next actions would be before discussing anything with her parents. But then, the next day, when I came home from work that day, standing in front of our apartment building again, was Karen. As soon as I saw her, I tried to run away and hide so that she wouldn't find me, but she immediately saw me, ran over to me, and grabbed me. And then she turned to me, and smiling from ear to ear, she said, "Guess what? Henry proposed to me yesterday. We're gonna get married." I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of her mouth. The only response that came out was, "Excuse me?" But then Karen continued on, speaking really fast with excitement. "Yesterday, when I saw Henry, he started talking about his fiancée, and he was looking me in the eyes as he said it. And I thought finally he was proposing to me officially, so I said yes. And then right at that time, I heard some footsteps, and I didn't really hear what he said after that, but the way he was looking me in the eyes, I knew immediately." And she said that like she was bragging to me. I realized that Karen had another unbelievable misunderstanding of the situation, and I couldn't help but to bury my head in my hands. Right at that moment, Henry had come home from work, and then, when Karen saw him, "Oh goodness, look! My sweet husband! Welcome home!" And she ran over to Henry and tried to hug him. At that moment, Henry avoided her and said,
"Wait, what? Did you just say husband? Huh? But you're not my wife! What are you talking about?"
And he brushed her off, but then Karen froze. "Yeah, husband. Wait. What?" After she processed what Henry had just said, this time she started crying and said, "What's that supposed to mean? Does that mean you were lying to me? Did you fool me?" She started crying and yelling in a loud voice again. Henry said,
"That's enough. There's nothing we can do anymore."
And he forced Karen into the car and said,
"Let's go."
When he started driving, I realized that we were heading back towards our neighborhood, and we arrived at Karen's parents' house. "Wait, what are you going to do?" Karen was starting to panic, but Henry ignored her, and he rang the doorbell. Karen's parents answered the door. Ever since we were little kids, all of our families had been friends with each other, so as soon as Karen's parents saw Henry and I, they looked happy to see us and said, "Oh my, Henry, Ashley, long time no see," and tried to warmly welcome us in. When we saw how happy they were to see us, it made it hard for us to tell the truth. But Henry mustered up the courage, and he told Karen's parents all about what a stalker she had been and all of her misunderstandings. When her parents heard this, Karen's mother started crying and apologizing profusely to us. Her father was furious. He grabbed Karen and dragged her into the back of the house. We could overhear him yelling at her. A few days later, Karen's parents asked if they could speak with us. So that weekend, Henry and I drove back and went to meet her parents. Because Henry and I had known Karen since we were little kids and grew up together, we had no intention of going to the police. But to our surprise, Karen's father asked us,
"Please, go and file a police report about Karen."
According to what her mother told us, after that, Karen continued to insist that she was going to be getting married to Henry. Even though her parents kept telling her that she wasn't dating Henry and it was never going to happen, she would go into hysterics.
"There's no way that's true. He promised me that he would make me his wife."
And she refused to listen to anything that they would say. Her parents both seemed like they were pretty troubled by this, and because they were also afraid that Karen might try to do something that would be a danger to both Henry and myself, they felt like there was no other choice but to hand her over to the police. Since this was a request that came directly from her parents as well, we decided to file a police report, and Karen ended up being arrested on charges of stalking. When Karen was arrested by the police, it seemed like she finally understood the gravity of the situation. She tried to say,
"Oh, this was nothing. We're all childhood friends. It was all just a joke together."
But of course, there was no way that that was going to pass, and in the end, she finally apologized for what she had done. After that, because Karen now had a criminal record, she had difficulty finding a job. Apparently, she continued going into debt, and eventually, she was kicked out of her family home. Recently, when Henry and I went back to our neighborhood, we went to meet her parents, and they told us that Karen is currently working cleaning the sewage in a country that we had never even heard of. As it turns out, she had reached out to suspicious moneylenders and taken out a loan from them, and because she was unable to pay back the debt, she's having to work a job that pays 50 cents an hour in a different country. But her parents told her that she did this all to herself, and they said that until she truly changes, they have no intention of helping her. As for what happened to Henry and I, after that we were able to get married, and 1 year later, it was discovered that I was pregnant. Now that our biggest concern was gone, I felt like we were finally able to enjoy the peak of our happiness. I think that Henry and I will be able to build a family together where the smiles will never end. I don't think that we'll ever have to get involved with Karen again for the rest of our lives. And the only thing I can hope for is that she's doing well wherever she is. Nobody was going to get in our way anymore, and I just wanted to protect this happiness forever.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.